Hello, welcome back to Math Time with Professor Prime, and I'm your host as always, Professor Prime. Let's talk about math and bowling. We'll talk about the basics of bowling, and we'll talk about how math is involved, and we'll kind of go from there. Let's get into it. So, when it comes to bowling, the general premise is you take a ball, you roll it down a lane, and you hit a set of pins. Now, whether you get a strike, like hitting all the pins down at once, or not, you're looking at your progress throughout the course of that game and comparing that to others if you're playing with them to see who wins. And there's different rules and different regulations with that and different variations on bowling itself. Now, in my experience, I've played mostly 10 pin. And I gotta imagine that's the case for a lot of other people, but there are like different variations, like I was saying. In any case, let's talk about things a little bit and focus in on that. So there's a lot of math and just the fact that it's a game and you're scoring it and the different rules and variations involved with whatever type of bowling that you're doing, right? So they're just math on that base level, but also the fact that we have this ball and there's math in that ball, its shape, its weight, what it's composed of, what it's doing on that lane, right? There's math in the lane, um, how long it is, how wide it is, what it's composed of, the physical properties of that lane, and how it's interacting with the ball, mapping what you're doing with that ball, the motions that you're taking, the speed and angle and position of the ball as it's going down the lane, if you're getting that strike or not, how that affects your game, and just so many other things. It's just a very interesting thing, right? Because like there's a lot of physics involved. We're dealing with shapes, we're dealing with motions, we're dealing with physics, we're dealing with calculus and chemistry, and there's math across the board. And so you also have to consider strategy because you're gonna know how you move, you're gonna know how you react to the ball. So you're gonna have to adjust accordingly and try to hit things at the right angle with the right amount of force and knock down the right amount of pins. And if you're not able to knock them all down at once, it's like, well, what can you do to knock down the rest? And if you have made it past the point where you didn't get a strike, you didn't get a spare, it's like, well, how can you salvage things? How can you get things down? You have to consider that. And there's so much math that goes into that. And I talked about the lanes and the ball, but there's math in the pins too, of course, and how they're shaped, how they're weighted, what they're composed of, how they're set up, what you're doing when you are rolling your ball down, how you're visualizing everything. There's math across the board, and I think that's interesting, right? Like math is everywhere and it's in everything, and I think sports can be a good way to see that. And there's math in the game and how it's played and scoring it, and that's something that I mentioned. But also, just what you're scoring it with, is, if tech is involved, which it often is these days, how that's being recorded, how you're coming across that, and there's math in these things and more because it's like there's also money involved. Money, of course, to rent the equipment to use a lane, but also just money in constructing a bowling alley. And looking at the dimensions of the lanes and making sure everything is even. Like fair for people, and just, if you're doing it professionally, there's math in that too, and just all across the board, the fact that there's money involved, that's math. So yeah, there's math and all these things and more as far as bowling is concerned. And like, I hope you thought about something differently after watching this. Either way, if you want to talk about bowling, please feel free to. And I'll see you in the future. Professor Prime out.